When we think of failed states, the images that come to mind are Afghanistan or Yemen or South Sudan. But Lebanon, once the most glamorous country in the Middle East, is joining those ranks. On Monday, Lebanon's former Prime Minister Saad Hariri announced that he was suspending his 17-year political career and would not seek re-election for either himself or his party. For a man whose family has been at the center of Lebanon's post-war political history, the announcement was momentous. He cited sectarianism and rising Iranian influence as some of the reasons for his decision. But Hariri's retreat from the political sphere would be inconceivable if not for the total collapse of Lebanon's economy. In a blistering statement issued Tuesday, the World Bank called this one of the most severe economic collapses the world has seen since 1850. Here is a picture of the collapse in data. In 2020, GDP fell by a staggering 21%. While other countries have bounced back from the initial shock of the pandemic, Lebanon's GDP has further declined last year by an estimated 10.5%. What does that look like in dollars? GDP was $52 billion in 2019. In 2021, it fell to less than $22 billion. That is a 58% contraction, the largest among 193 countries examined by the World Bank. The scale of the crisis for ordinary Lebanese people is evident everywhere you look. The value of the currency has fallen by more than 90% since 2019. Average inflation was at 145% last year. The prices of food, transportation, and clothing have quadrupled. More than 70% of the population now lives in poverty. As the prices of fuel and medicines have risen, people wait for hours at gas stations and pharmacies. Power cuts have lasted as long as 23 hours. Banks have limited how much money people can withdraw from their accounts, and the currency crash means their pay isn't worth much anyway. Reuters notes that a soldier's salary used to be worth $900 a month. It is now worth $50. Why is this happening? The World Bank puts it uncharacteristically bluntly. It calls this a deliberate depression orchestrated by the country's elite. That's the political elite that has, since the end of the Civil War in the early 1990s, milked the state for whatever money it could extract with no apparent concern for the survival of the Lebanese people. The war pitted Christian against Muslim, sect against sect. Its solution was a fractious power-sharing agreement. The government was split between Christians, Shiites, and Sunni Muslims, Druze, and Armenians. As the journalist Rania Abu Zaid wrote recently in the New York Times Magazine, sectarian warlords became sectarian politicians and set up the government to evade accountability for shameless profiteering. The judiciary and other checks on government were deliberately handicapped. Corruption and patronage networks became central features of the state, and they have spilled over into an unusually active part of the Lebanese economy, its banks. According to 2014 research by the American University of Beirut, 29% of the banking sector's assets are held by just 8 politically connected families. The current crisis has incensed the public and led to widespread protests, but none of this has led to any real change. We rail against corruption everywhere, but Lebanon's example shows how, when it pervades all, it can almost literally destroy a country.